My name is Joe Lopez. I was born in Sanger, California. I am the I am the sixth son of Diego Esqueda Lopez. My family is really a military family, being that my oldest brother was born in Juarez, Mexico, and during the war, he joined the American Army because there were not enough men to go to war. And so anyway, he went to the Pacific. He joined the Pacific for 3 years. From the time that he enlisted until the time that he got out, it was 3 years and 11 months in the Pacific. After coming home, I recall when we went to San Francisco to pick my brother up. Of course, I was a very young little boy, but I remember him as a big, tall soldier, and somehow I wanted to be like him. So my father always said that after living in the United States, he said that this was our country and that we should serve our country. Two of my brothers joined the military. One went Tony. His real name is Antonio, but we always call him Tony. He enlisted in the army, and he was sent to Japan. While he was in Japan, I recall as a youngster that my dad said that Tony was coming home after spending 3 years in Japan. The next thing I know, that if I recall, is that my dad said that Tony was not coming home, that he was going to be sent to Korea. So he was sent to Korea. He stayed in Korea. I don't recall how long, but I do recall as a child that I would ask him questions when he came back. And he told me that, if I recall correctly, that he was with the 24th Infantry or the 25th Infantry in Korea. I know that it was not a happy visit to Korea because when he came back, he had a lot of PTSD. We didn't know that he had PTSD. My dad was really concerned about him because he would crawl around and hide under the bed, and he would go through when we had a lot of bushes in our yard, and he would always be hiding in the bushes, and because of his PTSD. But unfortunately, my dad didn't know what was wrong with him. When he would be settled down, I would ask him, why are you crawling around? And he would tell me that when he was in Korea, that they would take some of the hills, and then that the Chinese, and he always mentioned Chinese, that they were attacking in mass attacks. And he told me that the American units, were completely overpowered by the Chinese, and they had no alternative but to pull back. And he told me one day that when they were running back, that there was a deuce and a half, a truck, and it had a 50 caliber machine gun. So while everybody was running back, he told me he jumped on the truck and he stopped the assault. He stopped the assault, or slowed the assault. And after he ran out of ammunition, he said he started running, and he caught up to his unit. But he always said that the Chinese would always outnumber the Americans, and he said they would kill hundreds of Chinese, that they would still be coming towards them. I think that's probably one of the reasons that he was kind of, with his PTSD, just remembering the waves of Chinese that come forward. He said they were just hundreds and thousands. He said he couldn't get that out of his mind. So being that he was in so much combat, when he came back, he was really, really messed up. I remember that when he did come back, he was in the uniform, in ODs, and he went to a bar, and the next thing we know is that he's in jail. He was in uniform. The police beat him up with clubs and knocked out all of his teeth, and just really beat him up. My dad went and got him out, and he was completely messed up. He couldn't forget what had happened in Korea. I guess his self-medication was to just keep on drinking, because he would drink and he would think about. I would ask him, Tony, why do you drink so much? He says, well, He said, I don't want to remember. As a child, I didn't realize that that was not a good thing, so I couldn't say anything. But still, he would crawl around, and when he got drunk, he would come home, and my poor father would say, Tony, what's wrong with you? What is the problem? And he said, nothing, Dad. There's nothing wrong with me. He never did go to the VA. He never got any kind of assistance. And unfortunately, he just became, later on in his life, he just wandered off and lived off the land, I guess. Because today, I guess we call them homeless veterans. So eventually he passed away in Arizona, and we buried him in Point Loma Cemetery, somewhere in San Diego, and that's where he's at presently.
So what were the dates that he was in Korea?
I don't remember because, like I said, I was just a little boy at that time. I remember that my dad said that Tony wants to get married to a Japanese girl, and he spoke perfect Japanese. And my dad said that he could not because he didn't want him to get married outside of his own race. And of course, he come back, and where I lived in Sanger at that time, we had a lot of Japanese Americans. And when he would get drunk, he would go out to the Japanese stores, and all the Japanese loved him because he spoke Japanese perfectly, and he played the guitar, and he'd get drunk right there. And he would only do this when he would get drunk. He would get his guitar, and he would go to the Japanese stores, and he would sing out there and serenade them. It was real funny at that time. But I asked one of my friends, he was Japanese American. He said, "Oh, your brother, he speaks good Japanese." But I guess it was because he was stationed in Japan before he was transferred over to Korea. When the Korean conflict broke loose, they sent him straight from Japan to Korea. Now, what year that was, I really don't know. That would probably be in the archives as to when they moved him from Japan into Korea.
And what was his unit, do you recall?
His unit could have been the 25th Infantry or the 24th Infantry. I remember one of those. I don't know why, but I think it's a 25th Infantry. I don't know if it was a regiment or what it was. Or maybe it's a 25th Infantry Division, but I don't know what regiment he belonged to. I would have to look into the archives and see if I can get a discharge paper, because the discharge paper would tell everything. And I guess being that it's been so long, the only thing I have is a photograph of my brother. And I believe that, looking at the wood behind him, I think he was in Japan at that time before he shipped out. And I think that photograph was the last picture that he sent my father, saying before he went to Korea, before they sent him to Korea. Because he said later on, well, he didn't know if he was coming back or not.
So what was your relationship with your brother growing up?
We were very, very, very tight as a family. We always were together. During that time, everybody worked. They worked out in the fields and were picking grapes. They picked oranges, whatever agriculture, because Sanger is an agriculture town. It's not a huge city, but there's all types of vegetation around there with a lot of fruit. Everything you can imagine comes out from that area. It's called the San Joaquin Valley. But as far as our relationship, we were all very, very close. And like I said, my dad didn't want him to marry outside of Hispanic heritage. So we were very close, and we always listened to our father. Our way of life was, if our father wasn't there, then we would obey our oldest brother, and that's the way it worked with us.
How many kids were in your family?
In our family, we're six males and one girl. Yeah, I guess it was, and Carmen was the oldest, and of course, she was the one that did all the work. And I remember she always took care of me because I was the baby of the family. But I remember her very well and always took care of me.
So what made you decide to go into the military?
Well, because my brothers being in World War II, my brother Tony in Korea, and my father always said, "This is your country, serve your country." Right or wrong is what my dad said. This is your country. If your country needs you, then you need to serve. So I always said I would do that. I have a son who, when he graduated from high school, he was very successful, and we would do races, car races. And one day, I asked him. He was underneath his car, and I asked him, I said, "Son, have you ever thought about the military?" He said, "No, Dad." He said, "I'm 21. I have my own business." And I said, don't forget, your grandfather always said, "This is your country. You serve your country." And about a month later, he told me he joined the reserves. And next thing I know, he says he's going to college. Next thing I know, he's going to ROTC. And now, in January, he's a Green Beret also, and he'll be a colonel in the United States Army.
So how does that feel as a dad?
Good. Yeah, good, very good. To be able to pin his wings, jump wings, to be able to give him his Green Beret, present him his Green Beret. Yeah, I felt very, very happy. But at first, I didn't want him to be a Green Beret because of the dangers, but that was his decision. I asked him, I said, "Son, why did you want to be a Green Beret?" He says, "You did it, Dad." I said, "Okay, your decision." And now he's in Washington, D.C. And he's done a lot of good things for this country that can't be spoken about. I don't even question him because I know what he's doing and I don't need to know.
How many years were you in the military?
I was only in the military 32 years and 11 months.
Only?
Only 30, yeah. I really didn't want to make a career. And what happened was I was in Germany. I was 17 years old when I joined the service. My father, like I said, I wanted to go to Korea, but I was too young. And my dad said, You're too young. When your brother comes back, we'll see what I can do for you." So when you're 17, he says, "I'll think about it." So when I turned 17, I said, "Dad, it's February the 23rd. I'm 17. I said, "Remember what you said?" And what I said? That when I turned 17, if I wanted to join the Army, that you would sign for me. "Oh, I said that? Yes, sir." So he went and signed for me. I joined the Army and went to jump school. I was 17, got my wings, and away I went to Germany. Well, I was stationed in Munich, Germany with the 11th Airborne Division. I was young, I had a good time, and went up the ranks. I was the youngest staff sergeant in the regiment, and they wanted me to become an officer. And I said, "No." I said, "My dad only signed for me for 3 years." And I said, "But you're officer material." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, I got to go home and take care of my dad." So my company commander called me in and says, "Sergeant Lopez," he said, "I want you to go to OCS, Officers Candidate School." I said, "No, sir. My ETS is coming about, and I'm getting out of the Army." So so when I went to the recruiter, because they had to sign different stations, the recruiter says, "The colonel wants me to put you down for OCS." I said, "Look, it's my ETA. I don't have any clothes. I sent all my clothes to California." I said, "We'll give you a new issue. It won't cost you anything." I said, "No." But when he said, "How did you like the girls out here?" I said, "Oh, beautiful German girls." Yeah, because I was only 17. And I said, "What about the beer?" "Oh, that Lowenbrau. I love that Lowenbrau." And I picked up German out there. And he says, "How old are you?" I said, "I just turned 20. He says, 20? No wonder they want you to go become an officer." I said, no, I'm going to California. You going to California? And you like Lowenbrau? I said, yeah, that's good beer. He says, you know what, that when you go to California, you can't drink beer? I said, why not? He says, you're not even 21. So I said, what does that mean? He said, you can't drink beer unless you're 21. He said, sign here. We take a three more years, and when you're 21, you can go back home and drink beer. So I started thinking, wow, what am I going to do? I can't drink beer and have a good time. So I re-enlisted for 3 more years, and then 3 more years and 3 more years. But I was very successful in my ranks and everything else. I went all the way to the top, and over 30 years later, here I am, and retired.
What year did you enlist?
I came in January, in February when I turned 7th February, and I got out in July of 1986. And only because I was not 21 years and I could not drink beer. That's something. Well,
Funny how one decision leads to the next.
and here I am. And I've been retired over 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in El Paso if you were from California?
Well, during the Cuban crisis, during the Vietnam, there were a lot of protesters. I was very, very hurt by our people. I didn't want to go back to California. I just decided that California was not going to be the place to go because of the protesters. And I felt that it was very beneficial for me to stay away because with my post-traumatic stress disorder, who knows what I would do. You know, it's so easy to take somebody's life. You know, it's just I wouldn't want to do that. So I never went there, and I stayed away. But I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I had 9 counties under me when I was in Austin, and I had while I was on active duty. Well, I've been in so many different assignments. I was in Class 3 of the Sergeant Major's Academy. That was in 1973 when I arrived. Like I said, I always liked the military. After I got into it, I really liked the military, and I went up the ranks pretty fast. I was in Class 3 in 74, graduated in 74. I went to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Got promoted when I was there. And, of course, in the military, you go wherever they need you. So they needed me, I guess, at the University of Texas, Arlington, to be an instructor out there. So I went, and I saw a whole bunch of young little 17-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids, and I need to make these kids officers. So what I did, well, they were going to close the department, military science department, because they didn't have enough cadets. So I looked around and I saw what was happening, and before I knew it, I had these individuals who I felt that they would make good officers in the U.S. Army. So I was pretty hard on these guys. I had them on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays where I trained them. And out of those people, I was there 4 years. Out of those people, to date, I have 3 that became generals. I have a whole bunch of them that were colonels. A lot of them became lieutenant colonels, and a lot of them became Green Berets also. So, on my last, and I had the 49th Armored Division, the Texas National Guard. I was a senior enlisted advisor. And when I was getting out at 30 years, and I was at Fort Sam Houston. The clerk that was there typing out my discharge paper, she was asking me some questions, and the next thing I hear is someone in the hallway saying, "Is there a Sergeant Major Lopez in here?" They were going up and down. Mrs. Peterson, I'll never forget her name, not even her name, Mrs. Peterson, said, Sergeant Major, you better go check it out. I said, no, no, ma'am. I said, I'm a civilian. I'm already gone. She says, well, check it out anyway. So I said, over here. This kid comes over, and he says, are you Sergeant Major Lopez? I said, no, I used to be a Sergeant Major. I'm a civilian now. And he said, what's your Social Security? And he said, this message is for you. I looked at it. I couldn't understand it. I took it to Mrs. Peters. I said, what does this mean? She pulled out my 214 and ripped it up. She says, you better go up to personnel. You're in the Army now. So I went up then anyway. They told me that the military needed me and that I was that because of my record and everything else, they wanted me to stay in longer. So I said, well, I'll give them another 3 years. Unfortunately, my command was going to be Alaska. That was going to be my command. But because I had already been in Arlington at the university, my son was out there living in that area at the time. I went and saw the military science department and saw the faculty and staff. They still remembered me. They were still same professors, everybody still the same. So I said, is Dr. Netterman still the president here? I couldn't believe it. After so many years, the same president? I mean, this guy's going to die until he dies. He's going to be the president. Yeah, he's still the president. So I went and saw him, and it had the same secretary. I walked upstairs, I went on the elevator, and his secretary was there, and she saw, oh, Sergeant Major. She got out and gave me a big hug, and how you doing? And where you? And this was a span of 15 years. Oh, I told her where I've been. I said, is Dr. Netterman? Yeah, he's in there. She said, walk on in. I said, can you make me an appointment? You were the only one the whole faculty and staff could walk in. So I walked in, and he was on the phone, and he looked at me, and he says, hey, I'll call you later. He says, Sergeant Major. He comes up and hugs me and everything else. Sit down. How about some coffee? And got some coffee. Well, he said, where have you been? So I told him where I had been. I said, right now, sir, I'm on my way to Alaska. I said, Alaska's my command. Alaska, he said, you got your orders already? I said, no, I'm waiting for them now. He said, just a minute. He went and got on the phone, just like you and I are talking right now. And he says, you're assigned to the university. I said, no, sir, I'm assigned to Alaska. He said, no, you're assigned to the university. Are you kidding me, sir? He said, no, I'm not kidding you. You're assigned to the university. I said, you can't do that, sir. He said, I already did it. So my last 3 years was at the university again. And that was the end of my career. They sent me right back to the university.
What kind of life lessons do you feel like you learned from your time in the military?
What kind of lessons? A lesson? The lesson that I learned is that I really love this country. I have seen a lot, and there's not another country like this country. It's just if you were to be able to go to different countries and there's no comparison. It's really a wonderful place to live, and thank the soldiers for that. Yeah. That would be a good lesson. I honor my brothers who served, my son who's in the military now, and my youngest. He's been in the Army almost 3 months. So and now my youngest is learning that you do need to love America. You do need to know the history of America. Who gave you this freedom? You know, the freedom of the press. You know, I understand that journalism is not a crime because we have to know what's going on, right or wrong. And there's so much that a soldier has sacrificed their lives for. But you Everybody who's never served, you will never understand. Never will you understand. We will give our lives. I'm prepared to give my life. There were many, many times where I didn't want to. I wanted to stay with my people and die with my people. But I was wounded twice, but somehow the good Lord took care of me. There must be a reason. And that's a lesson that I learned. Love your country. Learn about your country. Read your history, because there's a lot of history that's not being told to the public. Read it. Educate yourself. I think those who serve their country eventually will understand what they have done. You know, it's unfortunate that you see a lot of people who don't come back. A lot of people who have real bad wounds. But we're all proud. All of us nobody forced us to come in. We did it for our country. That would be a lesson that I learned, to love my country.
Is there any piece of wisdom that you would like to communicate to younger generations?
To the younger generation, I think it's education. Education will open doors for you. Learn about your country. Learn to love the flag. But the biggest thing, I guess, would be education. Don't drop out of high school. Hang in there. Don't do drugs. Don't get pregnant, because it's not going to help you. It's just education will open your door if you stay in there. That's one thing that I'm glad that I did. I got my education, and I was able to become successful. But I don't believe that had I not gotten educated, I don't think I would have gotten to where I've been and what I have done. And I have represented this country wherever I went, whatever country I went. You know, I realized that I was the red, white, and blue. If I did something wrong, America would not like that. So I knew I had to do what was right for this country. But education for these young kids is what they need. They need to know who they are. Where are they going? They have no idea. I go and talk to these high school kids and I ask them, what are you going to do after high school? I don't know. They really don't. And I would tell them, you know, I was just like you. I didn't know what I was going to do until this sergeant told me, where would you like to be 3 or 4 years ahead? Think ahead. Go for it. Maybe you won't make that far. Maybe you'll surpass it. No doubt that I surpassed my goals. So education is very important. I believe that what you're doing here with this program, I think it's wonderful. I think my brother, who was a Korean veteran, he's probably looking at me. He's probably looking down and saying, that's right, Joe. Serve your country. Learn about your country. Be proud of your country. And try to pass it on to your next generation. And that's how I feel.